Welcome back to Manifestly Good, the podcast where we explore the values, choices, and challenges that shape what it means to be a good man in today's world. Today, my guest is Tracy Hall, a name many of you may recognise as the last known victim of one of the world's most prolific con men, Hamish McLaren. But while that chapter of her life brought her into the public eye, it's not the whole story and not the focus of our conversation today. What Tracy brings to this conversation is an incredible perspective on values in regard to relationships, parenting, and the evolving expectations placed on men today. She speaks with clarity and generosity about her own upbringing and how that shaped her beliefs, and how men today can rise to the emotional complexity of modern life through honesty, shared responsibility, and heart. This is a conversation about challenge and about hope, and I'm incredibly grateful to have had it. Welcome to Manifestly Good, where we delve in what it means to live as a good man in today's world. Today's guest is someone who's not just smart, successful, driven. She's also got some hard-earned wisdom and a lot to say when it comes to character, resilience, and trust. Tracy Hall, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Tracy, you've had what I'd describe as an extraordinary career in business. You're a marketing executive. You've worked guiding the start of the Sydney Olympics, but then later working some of the world's big tech companies, hedge funds and finance. But unfortunately, you're well known for a really challenging part of your life. So your story is a really interesting one. How do you introduce yourself these days? How would you describe Tracy Hall?
These days I say I'm an author, I'm a speaker, and I'm an educator and advocate for fraud and scams as the victim survivor of intimate fraud.
Your story as a victim survivor of a well-known intimacy con man is well known to Australians and is the subject of your book. And I know you've covered that a lot in a lot of other podcasts. Today, we're going to get into that a little bit, but mainly I'm excited to have you as a guest because of your experience, your business experience and your most recent journey as an author. I know you have so much to say about what it means to be a man living with a strong set of values, because you've had to deal with so many of life's challenging experiences. I'm interested in, how would you personally define what's meant by a good man?
I think it's like, I don't think it in terms of what a good man is. I think of it in terms of what a good human is. And if I apply kind of a non-gendered approach, it works for both genders. But I would say somebody who knows who they are. I believe it is somebody who has really strong values, morals and ethics, and is not afraid to stand up for those. One way I like to describe it is somebody who is an upstander, not a bystander. Yeah. So I do think they are elements of being a good human, but when I think about men, they are the things that I really respect.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know I've framed Manifestly Good is about inspiring men, and a lot of that framing comes from when I think about a lot of the world's challenges and problems, men seem to be at the heart of them. Equally, I think you're absolutely right. The types of values we talk about are not confined to one gender or the other. And I like the ones that you describe. Your story made headlines around Australia and the world when you were the subject of an elaborate case of intimacy fraud, a trust-shattering thing to go through. But what's most remarkable about that is the fact that you've used that to help other people, to use it as a cautionary tale, as a platform to talk about trust and how other people can avoid that sort of thing, how trust and values and healthy relationships, what they can actually look like. And I think that's really inspiring. What values, in terms of intimate relationships, what do you think are the values that should be most important to men in intimate relationships?
I think the values for me, obviously because of my experience, honesty is the number one, and through honesty you can build trust. I think respect is very important, respect of each other. And the third value, I think, which is really important between partnerships, is communication. And I think if you have those three things, they are a really beautiful bedrock for everything else.
Honesty. What do you tell me more? What do you mean? What does honesty look like in a healthy, intimate relationship?
I think honesty is not being afraid to say the things that you might want to keep hidden. It's about always telling the truth so that the person that you're with never has to guess what is happening, what is going on, what's happening behind the scenes, anything like that. So, trust is built from that.
Yeah.
And without trust, you can't have a solid relationship, whether it's intimate or not. And I think because of what I've been through most recently in the last sort of 8 years, without honesty, I can't move forward. I don't care if the answer is not what I want to hear.
Yeah.
I just want to know the truth, because if you've got the truth, you can work forward from there.
Yeah.
If you're dealing with falsities or you're dealing with portions of the truth, then you're starting off on shaky ground to start with, and you actually can't navigate from there. It's very rocky. It's very unstable. So for me, honesty is the key foundation to build trust in a relationship.
Yeah. It absolutely, in any relationship, right? But intimate ones, it's a foundation. It gets a bad name, I think, in the modern dating world, particularly as apps and things like that have made us more transactional. Do you think, in your experience, and do you think that men struggle with the honesty side of things in the kind of current dating market and intimate relationships?
I think we're always trying to put our best foot forward, or we're trying to make it look like it's our best foot forward. So, and that is about wanting to be liked, wanting to be accepted, wanting to belong, wanting to get ahead. It's all of those kind of elements. So you're constantly putting your best side forward. Now, if we think about dating, you don't put up the ugliest pictures of yourself on a dating app. You don't say what your worst habits are and that you snore really loudly every night. You don't put those things up because you want people to like you. You want to be attractive to other people. You want people to respect you. You want people to pick you, in essence, in the dating app sense. So, it's no surprise that's that things can kind of bend in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And I understand that in the first impressions count, right?
Yeah.
But if the first impression or the way you start off on a relationship is based on a false foundation, as it was in the case of Hamish McLaren and myself, or Max Tavita, it can only go downhill from there, because eventually the truth comes out. So why wouldn't you just say it up front?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you just be comfortable with who you are and what you have to offer? And then you go from there. And if that's not the other person's cup of tea, well, then you're not meant to be together anyway. But I think there's this kind of, you sort of people present themselves as something, and then when you actually get to know them, they're the complete opposite. So it's actually quite disappointing in the end.
It is. Yeah. The more you talk about it, the more I realise that it is kind of the core of almost all of our values, that living in accordance with them is usually harder up front, but better in the long run, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's got to be true of intimate relationships and things too, and I think potentially more attractive in the short term too, if you're willing to say, actually, as much as I make it look like I go to glamorous restaurants, I really like spending my Saturday nights in my tracksuit pants with a block of chocolate watching Netflix.
100%. Well, then you're going to attract someone who's more like-minded.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, if you say you want to go to restaurants all the time and then you attract someone who wants to do that, you're not going to be having a good time. You're not going to actually be wanting to do it. So it starts on rocky ground, and there is only one direction for those things to go, and it's not up.
Yeah. Honesty's, I think you're absolutely right, is a strong one. I don't know if you've read the book called Lying by Sam Harris, who puts forward the idea that you should never lie, which I read and was really challenged by. And when started road testing it a year and a half ago, I read it, and that's the place I've come around to. He postulates that it's a bit like what we've just said around values, that it's harder up front, but you're willing to put the work in. He even goes as far as, getting into white lies around things that we normally think are there to make other people feel better, but in the end, you can find a way around those too. So I like it. Based on your experience, where do you think men struggle the most in relationships?
I think communication is really difficult. I think if there's a big gender difference, I think women are better at communicating. And I don't know whether that is biological. I don't know whether that's come through modelling.
Yeah.
But generally, women are able to communicate better, more freely, more openly, more vulnerably. All of the kind of elements that require good communication.
Yeah.
And I think back to relationships I've had in my life with men, and a lot of the challenges have come through a lack of communication, a lack of being able to really talk something out until it's solved, until you've nutted it out, until you feel comfortable with where the other person sits.
Yeah.
Because without communication, you're guessing, right? I can talk to the cows come home, but if my partner is not responding, not reflecting, not giving me any insights into their own thinking or where they sit with an issue, I'm flying blind, and it gives me no insight into them, and you can't sort of figure out a way to move forward. And it kind of just becomes this silent, I don't know, awkwardness in a lot of ways that you actually don't know the person you're with unless you really communicate. But I do think men find that a lot harder in many, many aspects, especially when it comes to expressing emotion or how they feel about something or their fears or anxieties around things. Whereas women are very open about those issues with friends, with partners, with children. I think it's a little bit more difficult for men.
That's been my experience too, both personally and what I see. One of the commonly heard bits of guidance is that men try to fix problems when they really should just be listening to what's actually going on and trying to relate. Would you agree with that? What are some of the common mistakes you think men make when they are trying to communicate?
Yeah, it's like that old saying, do you want me to help you, or do you want a hug? Do you want help or a hug? And women often just need a hug, or just need a listening ear, or, someone just to hear them out. And hearing and listening is very different to going, oh, but if you did this, it'd be better, or that person needs to do that, or, and I understand why that is. It's, you're trying to help, really. But then you compare that to how women have conversations, and you say that you have the same discussion, and you'll hear a woman say, I'm really sorry that happened to you, or that must have been really hard for you, or, geez, that's shit. That's crap, and that's the way the conversation is dealt with. And that's all you need, because often you don't need the help or the solution. You just need to be heard.
Or at least not first.
At least not first. And often you come up with those solutions together.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just in the expression of the problem or the situation, that's enough to make you feel at ease or at peace with what's happening.
Yeah. So first of all, are you good at giving those signals, whether you need help or a hug? Like, is that something you do, or you feel better when someone naturally can see that's what you need?
I don't think I go into conversations saying, I just need you to listen.
Yes.
Because often it just comes out, you're in the moment and something's happened and you might be kind of triggered emotionally or spurred on.
There's really strong feelings going on.
Or you're reacting to something, or something's just kind of giving you a bit of a buzz or whatever. And you just want someone to kind of sit there with you and go through that. So I don't think it's something I say, hey, I just need you to listen. I don't need you to give me any advice. It just sort of blurts out.
Yeah.
But it's something that I think about with my daughter, because, when the conversations come, do you need a hug or do you need help? That's the response, because sometimes they may be, sometimes you are asking for help. Look, I don't know what to do in this situation. What would you do?
Yeah.
Or, do you just need a hug right now?
Yeah.
Is that what you need? And you just need a listening ear. So it's something that I'm trying to do with my daughter as she kind of moves through her teenage years, because I don't want to have, as a parent, you just want to solve everything. You want to take away all their pain. You want to do all the things.
So I know this, and it's so hard to not want to solve what seem like obvious answers, and instead to go exactly what you said. That must be really frustrating.
Yeah. Or actually, it's a coaching method, is coaching them through a problem so that they come up with the answers themselves. Solution. Because if tomorrow you're not here for whatever reason, they'll have those skills to actually solve those problems for themselves in the future. So it's actually a really empowering skill to give someone as well, especially children as they're going through their development. But in terms of intimate relationships, it's not something I preface up Right.
Yeah,
Maybe I should. And I think that's one of the challenges too. It's not always clear. And I do see sometimes confusion in the eyes of men. It's like, what am I meant to do in this moment? And they want to help and they want to solve. But, they also, maybe I just need a hug right now. I just need someone to tell me it's going to be okay.
Yeah. So I love this. There's so much in here. And you're right. It's both like, we've got intimate relationships, we've got relationships with their children, and probably, much of the same things going on here, high emotions and things like that. And someone where, you led with communication is the challenge.
Yeah.
And I think you're absolutely right, Tracy. But you had lots of nuggets of good advice in there, and I bloody love it. Perhaps there is work to be done on both sides, one half saying, hey, it'd help a lot if you just listened to how I felt, gave me a hug rather than try to fix it.
Yeah.
But if you're a guy, what I'm hearing here is like, look for the signals, and maybe you want to be explicit enough to ask, but look for the signals and don't dive into just trying to solve something if you really want to help.
Yeah. And maybe a compassionate answer is, would you like help or would you like a hug?
Yeah.
And it takes away that, because even when I hear you say that, like prefacing it by saying, hey, I don't want you to solve this, I just want you to listen.
Yeah.
That can feel a bit aggressive sometimes too, especially if you're in a heightened emotional state when you're about to tell a story or relay a situation or a problem. And depending on where the relationship's at, that can seem to be like a bit of a big instruction before you've even, delved into the problem. Like, hey, just listen to me now because, so a really compassionate response is, do you need a hug or do you need help?
I like it.
Yeah.
I'm taking a lot of mental notes. And look, and I don't think it's limited to intimate relationships. All of this reminds me of I was going through a tough emotional time a few years ago, and I was on a holiday with a good mate, and I got off a frustrating phone call and vented to him, and he just tried to fix the problem. And I was really emotional, and I probably needed to tell him, I just need you to listen and say that's really frustrating.
Yeah.
And I was not in any state to do so. And anyway, he copped all of it. And it was a good learning moment for both of us. So, I love it, Trace. I love it. So I know you've lived the modern dating culture and dating apps and re-entered that space after divorce, having last dated when things were way more traditional and before all that sort of stuff.
Dating apps didn't exist.
The dating apps didn't exist. I know, and I'm doing the same. So I'm really curious about your answers on the next question about what qualities men need to reclaim or redefine. And for you in particular, you've walked a path that no person should ever have to, with that betrayal of trust and things like that. So the fact that you're able to move on so positively from that is just amazing and inspiring. What qualities do you think men need to reclaim or redefine?
One that I think about is redefining what confidence is as a man, presenting an air of confidence. And I think we all want to present an air of confidence, especially when we're meeting new people. Like,
confidence is really attractive, right?
It is attractive. I've got it under control, or I've got things handled, or, but it is it's sort of redefining that goes from a place of sort of a dominant energy, like I'm all over it, like driven by ego, to one that is more based on self-awareness and like a real security in who they are as a person. And I think that's a really interesting thing to think about, because confidence is an attractive trait, but coming from a different direction, it can end up pretty ugly, or it can end up really admirable and, even more attractive. But I think there's, when you talk about people being quietly confident, because they just know who they are, and they're not easy to sway. And I think that's a really interesting thing to think about, as opposed to, the puffed chest and the peacocking and the, and there are different levels of that as well. Some of them are more covert than others. But to me, that's not confidence. That's just cockiness. And it comes from a place of dominance and ego as opposed to a place of quiet confidence and sort of a self-awareness about who the person is.
Yeah. I think that's really good advice. I love you. I was going to ask you what your definition of confidence is, and you've done an excellent job. And what I'm hearing is that someone who's comfortable in their own skin and with who they are, and that engenders a confidence where they don't need to be anyone else.
Yeah, they're just happy with who they are in whatever. And that comes back to honesty. It's being honest with yourself about who you are, because we can't be all the things. We can't be like the celebrity we look at and admire. We can't be like the boss who runs a multi-million-dollar company because, for whatever reason, you can't be anyone else but yourself. But you have to know yourself first.
Yeah.
You have to accept who you are. You have to be confident in that. And then you have to be honest about who you are.
Yeah, thank you.
And with that comes
honesty.
a really strong baseline, I think. It's solid. It feels solid to me. Yeah.
It is, and you're right. It's linked to what you said, led with earlier, which is around honesty. It absolutely is. You've made me think about a divorcee in their 40s. Also, one of my observations is that men come out of divorce looking for confidence and convert that into trying to be better at a bunch of things. Make them look like a better version of themselves with that success at career, how they look, and things like that. And my observation of women doing the same thing is it's a much healthier looking for confidence in reinventing, trying to find out who they are and what their values are and what they represent.
Self-growth.
And I think what I'm hearing in your advice is that men could do a version of that too and go, hey, realise who you are, put energy into yourself and being comfortable with yourself, and that actually ends up being proper confidence. And
well, that I think you're right. And it comes back to those kind of traditional stereotypes where, reinventing yourself sometimes for a man looks like, getting rid of your dad bod, or, going all in on a passion or an interest, or, putting everything into your work. So there are these sort of external measures of what that feels like to reinvent yourself because you've got this newfound freedom or something. And what I see for women is a delving into self.
Yeah.
As opposed to thinking about the external. And that's not to say that we don't go to yoga and the gym and all of those things. It's more, help me understand myself, help me understand how this happened, help me understand the world I live in, help me understand who I want to be for the second half of my life.
Yeah.
And I always, say to my male friends that are going through divorce, if you want to connect or meet some really interesting women who are getting their shit together, go to a retreat.
Yeah.
It's where you'll find them. They're going to retreats. They're trying to learn more. They're reading. They're listening to podcasts. They're trying to really kind of better themselves and grow. And I'm not saying that men don't. There are many, many examples of them. But if I just look quite broadly and traditionally about the external versus the internal, and sometimes I even think in relationships at this age, there becomes a disparity of growth. Yeah. Because perhaps the male counterpart is very focused on career. It's that stage where you're really hitting your strides and your role or your position within a company or your chosen field of work.
Yeah.
And where, children are growing up. So the caring role that may traditionally have sat with the woman is becoming less. And so there's more time to go and explore. And there is a desire to have new experiences and have a big life and go and travel and do the retreat and go on the girls' weekend and read the book and do that extra course. And in some ways I see, and in the relationships I see in my world, the men are getting left behind a little. Yeah. And there's sort of then becomes this disparity of growth. And, some of my friends say, he's got to keep up with me. Yeah. If we're going to make it, he needs to keep up. He needs to keep pushing himself in a way that means we're growing together. Yeah. Because, so I think that's a really interesting thing that I've noticed as well. Yeah. But if you want to meet some chicks, Simon, go on a retreat.
Go on a retreat. I like it. The notes are being taken pretty heavily here. So lots of really important themes in there, Tracy, and thank you. That's my observation too. I see the women in my life that have exited a marriage are looking to, once they get through the really tough phase, are looking at the rest of their life in a really inspiring way and have realised it's a chance to align with who they are, that they may not have had a chance when they were the primary carer for children and things like that. And it's inspiring to see. And you're right, I think I've seen them kind of leaving male counterparts behind. The interesting bit is I think it's kind of it mirrors what we were talking about communication, that there's maybe a blending of, or a lot men have to learn from how women communicate. And what I'm hearing you say is that men can jump on board this the same sort of train too, this inner growth journey.
Yeah, or even just having a curiosity about the world around them.
Yeah.
You know, say for example, you know, and I know this is a prime example, the kids might be going through something. So the wife or the mother will go and, you know, research and find a podcast and a book, and it all gets sent to the dad, and nothing ever happens with it. And I know for myself what would be really lovely if it came the other way.
Yeah.
Because that would show a level of interest and lean in and curiosity about an issue or about a topic that I could learn something from, as opposed to being always driven by, you know, the female within the relationship.
Yeah.
And of course, in this capacity, I'm like, my mind's going crazy. Like, not all relationships are, you know, traditional relationships. Obviously we have, you know, same sex and different versions of that. So in this capacity, we're talking about a traditional male-female relationship. But yeah, I think, it's sometimes, and the conversations I have with my girlfriends are just, the word that comes to mind for me is like, the male counterpart is sometimes just a passenger.
Yeah.
You know, they are there to just be there. You know, they're not providing the podcast coming back, or the, hey, have you read this book, or I read this article today, or how about we go and do this course in 3 months' time, or why don't we travel here next Christmas, or you know, a lot of that is being driven by the woman, and that's just, I guess, another thing that we have to put on our to-do list. Yeah,
you remind me that a piece of advice I've heard kind of in this context too of dating and things like that men who exhibit what might be considered traditional sort of trait of taking the lead and being, you know, and it may be linked to confidence, is seen as quite attractive too, but in a modern context is probably, it's not being in charge or dominating, it's taking the lead and being thoughtful and giving options and saying, hey, I thought it'd be great if we went away for the weekend and I've researched and done this. Here's what I think you'd love. What do you think? Yeah. Is that the sort of thing you think is sort of one of the roles that men need to reclaim as well?
100%. I mean, some of those characteristics are so attractive. You know, there's courage, there's leadership, there's discipline, there's strength. But when they're expressed in a way that supports a partnership, not suppresses it, I think that's where it's really attractive.
Oh, I love the way you phrase that supports it, not suppresses it.
Yeah, and where it's a discussion and it's agreed. It's not, hey, we're doing this because this is what I want to do. It's like, hey, I've done some research and I think this is a really great idea. How about we think about fitting this into the schedule in the next month?
Yeah.
You know, and there is something really attractive about someone else taking the lead. Like, I'm a single mum. I have to do all the things. Sometimes I would just love someone to take the lead on certain things. And I know a lot of women feel like that, but it is a way that supports the relationship and the function of the family as opposed to suppresses or controls. And that's the difference. It's very nuanced. It's very subtle, but you can feel it, you know.
You're right, and it's a theme, you know, whether it's arrogance or confidence and the way we communicate, and the supports, not suppresses.
Yeah.
I like it. I want to shift gears to where you've taken your life in the aftermath of your horrible experience with Hamish. Is you now devote so much of your efforts towards education around fraud protection and financial responsibility and things like that. Traditionally, men are seen, like a very traditional role for men as financial providers. How do you feel men should be approaching financial responsibility in relationships today? Do you think it's different to the way it's been traditionally represented?
100%. I feel like we are one of the first generations that is modelling to our children what it means to have both parents working full time. Because I don't know about you, but when I grew up, very, very few women worked full-time. So my mum worked part-time. She was a physiotherapist. She could have had a huge career. But her and my dad decided that he would run a business and work full time, and she would work part time, and then she would run the family.
Yeah.
And I saw that as a very common family setup back in, the 70s and 80s when I was growing up. Fast forward to now, and we have, more often than not, both parents working. And we're in a situation where the parents who are working are thinking back to the modelling that they received when they were growing up.
Yeah.
And I think it's challenging. I think it's really challenging because, when I was growing up, like, my dad never ironed a shirt. My mum did everything. But that was the role that they had. That was what they agreed. She was happy with that. She was comfortable with that. And so my brothers grew up seeing a woman leading the family who did all the cooking, all the cleaning, all the ironing, all the driving to sport, all the organisation, all the shopping, all the washing, all the everything. And Dad was around. Dad was amazing, but he never did any of that.
Yeah.
And I often think, my dad died pretty young at 53, and I often think if my mum had gone first, I actually don't know what would have happened to my dad. Yeah. He is a very capable man, but never had to do anything like that.
And you're absolutely right. That was the cultural, conventional norm.
It was the norm. And so my brothers have grown up with that as the modelling, as have I. And therefore, we find ourselves now in a situation where we're both working full time. In some cases, the woman may be earning more money. In some cases, the woman may be pulling more hours. But there is still a lag in terms of this maternal hangover, I guess it's called, where, the mental load is generally on the woman. I do see it changing. I think it's really challenging for our generation because we haven't had the modelling to show us what good looks like. Yeah. And our modelling is the complete opposite. So it must be really hard for, and then you kind of get into this position where you're both working full time. A lot of the mental load is on the female in the partnership. And there are some amazing men, but they need to be told what to do, which also doesn't help because the woman still has to think about what needs to happen to tell the man to do it to make 100%. It happen.
A big struggle in my marriage. And I would have said, I'm here. And when we'd have these arguments about me not pulling my weight, and I'd explain how I'm doing this and this. Yeah. It took me a long time, and it took until after we were divorced, in fact, to pull apart that so much of the load is actually the conceptual planning load. And there's this awesome system called the Fair Play cards.
I love it.
Planning, conception, execution. And I'm deep in the execution end. Yeah. I'm doing lots of stuff, but I'm not carrying the load. My ex-wife would say my mind is like having 1,000 tabs open on my end. And I get it. I get it. And she was right. Yeah. And what you're saying is that the modern woman has kind of got it all, good and bad, a career, but is carrying all of the traditional workload of a single working parent household. Yeah. And we haven't renavigated into a cultural place that's healthy.
And systemically, I think things need to change. So, for example, when there's an issue at school, I always got called first.
Yeah.
Like, why? Yeah. Why does the mother get called first? Why don't they call the dad? Like, the dad is always secondary on the call list at a school. And I don't fully understand that, and these are things that I don't think are created through ill intent or maybe a little bit of ignorance in terms of the way things have progressed, but they're systemic, right? And, the kids will always come to the mum first, it's just, there are these things that need to change, but our job in this generation is to show our children that it can be different and it needs to be different. And that's where good role modelling from both genders need to happen.
Yeah. So circling around to, I know, I totally agree. In terms of the type of open and honest conversations about money and relationships and shared responsibility.
Sorry, we got off track there.
Yeah. But you set it up perfectly because the foundation, it's not just what I'm hearing you saying, it's not just financial discussions and responsibilities that need to change. Yep. It's a breadth of things that our parents' generation modelled for us, which just don't fit in our current context.
That's right.
So what I know you have you have thoughts around what healthy looks like in terms of financial responsibilities and discussions in relationships.
And it does get back to not too long before I was born, or in fact during my lifetime, the systemic construct of financial empowerment for women. So it wasn't until the 1970s that women in Australia could get a loan in their own name without a guarantor, a male guarantor.
Yeah.
So unless you took, your brother, your father, or some other bloke along to the bank, you wouldn't get a loan.
It's crazy to imagine,
It's
isn't
mad,
it?
right? In the 1960s, you couldn't have a bank account in your own name. So my mum didn't have a bank account in her own name until the 1960s.
Wow, I didn't know that.
There are so many things that have just happened in my lifetime, which actually create this environment where traditionally the man is in charge of the finances. Now, that's not the male gender's fault. It's not female's fault. It's just systemic.
Yeah.
And these things have changed. And with that has come some opportunity for women and for men and for relationships. But it's also come with some baggage. And that baggage includes thinking that, it is a man's job to manage the finances. It is a man's job to bring in the money. It wasn't until 1966 in Australia that women were allowed to work in the public service after they got married.
Yes.
So there was this thing called the marriage bar. If you got married before 1966, you had to leave your job.
Yeah.
And your finances became your husband's business and responsibility legally.
Women hid their marital status, I believe, to continue careers and things like that.
They did. So you start thinking about things like this. This was not that long ago. And so there are all these deep-seated subconscious psychological money stories that we have in our lives, both men and women, that have, come into our world.
You're so right about the modelling too, isn't it? No, this is the subconscious behaviours that we have that we got from the modelling of our childhood. We don't think or question them; they're just there.
They're just there, and then you overlay that with, from a female's point of view, there's sort of these narratives that say things like, I'm just not that good with money. The truth is, women are great with money.
Yeah.
We can budget down to the last cent if we need to, but these bigger financial decisions were always left to the men. It was men's business, and I think, there's even these stupid narratives on TikTok around girl math. Girl math is this. And it's like, these are things that need to change because women are really great with money. Yeah. We just haven't either lent into learning about it and literacy and taken agency, or it has just been expected that the man will take that on. So not only do they have the job and the bigger job, there's still a gender pay gap. Of course, we know this. So they're earning more money. So generally when you have a family, the person who earns the less will take a back seat, because you want to earn more for the family. And, there's all these things that just perpetuate this notion that it is a man's job to bring in the money. Now, because we both work now in most couples, most of us both work, then that is an opportunity to re-navigate that conversation. And what comes with that, I think, is a really open mind. It's about being really curious. It's about thinking outside the square. It's about communication, and it's about being really honest. And they're hard conversations to have. Money can feel really icky, even within intimate partner relationships. It's almost like money is the last taboo.
Think about the difficult things that particularly people with children, if you have children, you navigate parenting styles can be something you don't. Yeah. And again, it's the same thing. It's modelled from us, our own parents, and you can have a clash of ideals around that. You don't even really know what it was. Yeah. It could be the way money was handled when you were growing up. It was completely different, and therefore you've got a challenge. Yeah. And the same with parenting styles. All the things you've suggested sound so much sense if you treat those conversations with empathy and curiosity and recognise the biases and stereotypes where they lay. So I was going to ask what your recommendations are for men in terms of leaning into having more healthier conversations, and it's the types of things you just described. Yeah,
100%. And I think too, there are a lot of people, and I'll talk on behalf of myself and my experience, and as a female, that it is, we have a lot on our plate, and it's easy to lean out of those conversations because financial literacy is not always easy. It's not always accessible. It's not written in language that we can easily understand. So it's very easy to go, "Oh, it's a bit hard. That's a bit much. I've got a lot of other stuff going on over here. You take care of it." And it's kind of this, ignorant handover of the finances because we inherently think that men might be better at it than us, or we've got enough else on our plate. We do the monthly budget. You do the big stuff. And I think women have lent out of that conversation. And I heard this great saying the other day. I was on a different podcast, and she was saying, outsource the execution, not the education.
Yeah.
So as long as you are both on the same page, you both have the logins to accounts, you both talk about it, there is transparency across everything. Because as soon as those things don't happen, you start to look at financial vulnerability. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. There are relationships where the woman handles all of that, part of the life. Now, if that woman was to pass away, the man becomes incredibly financially vulnerable. Doesn't know where anything is, doesn't know how it works, doesn't know what needs to go where, and vice versa. So having those conversations up front, being really open and honest, having full transparency, both being on the same page, then the execution is a different matter altogether. So I think that's a really interesting place to start. Outsource the execution, but don't outsource the education.
I really like that framing.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're right. We've started talking about men having the bulk of the responsibility. It could be either way, and we're not necessarily talking about heterosexual relationships either. But where there's an imbalance in terms of financial understanding, putting effort into making sure that there's balance for all the reasons you talked about. And you touched on the vulnerability word there. I would imagine that can translate into what you see through your fraud work, is that makes people exposed to those types of circumstances as well, more than they might normally be.
100%, or financial abuse.
Yes. And
I think it's important also to say that sometimes these things creep up on us without us knowing, and not through ill intent. I did a keynote for a corporate last year, and this gentleman came up to me at the end, and he said, he actually had tears in his eyes. He was so distressed. And he said, "Trace, I've just realised that my wife doesn't have the logins to our investments or our accounts. And I feel sick about it." And I said to him, "Well, I'm really glad that that's been a realisation for you. You need to go home and have this discussion with your wife tonight." And it hadn't been, he's like a beautiful man. It wasn't through ill intent. It was just sort of rolled out like that for them. And he said, if at any moment in time she had any shadow of a doubt that I had good intentions or bad intentions, that would, because she doesn't have her logins and she felt vulnerable, he said, that makes me feel ill. Or if something happened to me, she would be lost.
Yeah.
And in that moment, it dawned on him that decision within their relationship was putting her in a very, very financially vulnerable situation. And it can be vice versa, of course. So, I think having that togetherness, that transparency. The other thing is, and it must be this for men that do, carry the burden of financial responsibility for a family, that's a lot. Like, it's a lot to carry on your own. It's so much better when you've got someone there and you're bouncing off and you're both on the same page and you're both working towards the same thing and you've got some clarity and alignment. It must feel incredibly heavy to carry that on your own. And then you layer over the top of that, men aren't particularly good about talking about things and how they're feeling and what's stressing them and what their pressures are. Holding it all internally, and it can come out in other, more negative ways.
Yeah.
So I think there's sort of something for everyone there.
If I'm just wrapping up a couple of things you said, we talked about traditional values of work sharing and things like that, moving into finances and things like that. And a theme that's coming across is the benefits of evening that load and being more connected, and the benefits and some of the functional benefits around making a partner who's left when another partner leaves through divorce or death or something like that makes them in a much stronger position. what strikes me is that this has other benefits as well. I'm interested in knowing what you think about it in terms of intimacy. Like I have the feeling when I hear you describe this, it makes me think that it allows for greater connection in a partner, in an intimate relationship too. Do you feel that might be the case?
Yes, I think one of the best things about being in an intimate relationship where you are both on the same page and you're both moving in the same direction and you both have the same goals. Like there's nothing better because you got a teammate.
Yeah.
You got someone that's got your back. You got someone who wants to reach the same endpoint as you. There is nothing worse than being in a partnership, and I've had relationships like this in my life where those conversations are off limits. You will not tell me how to budget. You will not tell me how to spend money. And so those conversations never happen. So you're working your absolute butts off, earning good money, but going nowhere.
Yeah.
And there is nothing better than saying, sitting down over a glass of wine and going, what do we want our life to look like?
Yeah.
How are we going to get there? What are we going to do about that? What are you going to do? What am I going to do? What are we going to do together? And that is really, that does make you feel connected.
Yeah.
And to know that you're not doing that on your own and you're doing it with someone who loves you, has the same vision as you, and you can see a future. Like there's something
I can
really...
see it in your body language too. It gives me a buzz to think about that too. It's an electrifying thing. It's
it's exciting, and it gives you something to look forward to the future for.
Yeah.
Because why are we working so hard?
Yeah.
If we don't have a vision, if we're just bumbling our way through.
Isn't that a sad thing when people do work so hard and get to like those stories of people getting to hitting retirement and passing away quickly, or getting to retirement and this is a financial thing too, and realizing that they can't, they don't have shared aligned dreams about what that looks like, and retirement's an awful place to be together. And,
so just keep working.
So what I'm hearing, people do. So what I'm hearing you saying is the connection in financial, the shared literacy and understanding of what's going on with your finances has so many benefits. Yeah. The trivial one I thought of is that old saying about men who empty the dishwasher get more sex. Maybe this translates to that, men who, or whoever is the dominant financial head of the partnership, female, male, or otherwise, the more they're willing to be transparent and share and do that in a shared, values-driven way, likely to have better results in the intimacy side of things too. Who knows? I know you've had lots of male role models that have defined your values. I'm excited about having you on Manifestly Good, Tracy, because your value system is evident and very strong. You are very purpose-driven, and that comes through the things that you give so much of your time to. Your resiliency through an experience that no one should have to live through and come out the other end to inspire other people is shows your integrity and empathy, and your willingness, your kindness and willingness to make the world a better place is really strong. And you must have had some really strong role models in your early years. I'm interested in the male role models you had when you were growing up, and what that meant for your definition of masculinity. I mean, how did they shape what your idea of what a man is?
I think that my biggest male role model was my dad.
Yeah.
He was an incredibly hard worker. He was very much a family man. He just adored my mother, just like worshipped the ground that she walked on. My mum's a pretty forthright, dominant character, so she did sort of run a pretty tight ship at home, but she had 3 kids in 3 years. She had to. And, her and dad worked really well, I think, as a team. My dad was probably, what I loved about him was he had this emotional, spiritual side to him that you would never imagine, because he was a diesel mechanic that put turbochargers onto aeroplanes and ships and stuff like that. He worked in a very masculine, what you'd say is very masculine industry, but he had books on his bookshelf about astral traveling and, these philosophical 1970s books like Jonathan Livingston Seagull and, The Richest Man in Babylon and, just crazy what we'd call now self-help, self-growth books. And so I really loved that side of my dad, because he was a worker and he provided for his family and I guess all of those traditional roles.
Yeah.
But he had this other side to him that allowed for a softer, more emotional side. And I think because I was the only girl, I had two brothers, I got to see that side of Dad, especially as I got older, probably more than my brothers did.
Well, yeah, I'm intrigued as to what that looked like, this emotional, spiritual side of things. How did that manifest in terms of your relationship with him?
He just made comments. Like, I'd say things like, and I wrote about it in my book, I woke up one morning and I explained this dream that I had. And he goes, oh, that's astral traveling. Here, read this book.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, like, who are you? You know, and he just surprised me with things like that. And he was very philosophical in his view on life. He had a really, I don't even know how to describe it, like just a very accepting way to view the world. And he had a great sense of humor. He was really funny. So, you know, that was, I guess, my view of him. If I look at it from a traditional point of view, he very much was the, you know, the provider for the family in terms of, you know, the money, and he had the business and he was very, you know, he was very much a worker. Like Dad worked a lot. Yeah. I mean, he had an incredible work ethic, but because of that, you know, Mum was at home running the house and what have you. So I think it was sort of, I guess when I look in retrospect, quite a balanced view. Unfortunately, he passed away when he was 53. I was 25 or 26. So I only got to know him to that point. Yeah. So I would have liked to have had more time with him in my adult life to philosophize about the world and, you know, and it's interesting because he, you know, he hadn't traveled the world. He really had barely been overseas. Yeah. But he just had this really worldly view and this very philosophical view on the world, which I loved.
Yeah, so fascinating. It's hard not to when you think about, if you have a strong connection to either of your parents and you think about them, it's hard not to, right? And when you think about where your values come from. So first of all, thank you for sharing.
It would have been their 53rd wedding anniversary today.
I don't know about you, but when I was young and I heard those numbers, it didn't mean a lot to me.
Oh, it's incredible.
And as we hit our phase in life, you know what that road feels like. Yeah. And the water under the bridge is a lot. What I heard is that your dad's far from a one-dimensional character, and when it comes to the masculine model he portrayed, he, you know, but in addition to having a traditional sort of work and family place where he was a provider and worked hard and things like that, he had many other parts to him, including a very philosophical side, which transferred into his relationship with you. Yeah. And importantly, you said your mother had a very special place in his life and was the centre of his feelings a lot. So the modelling in terms of, it had some really traditional aspects to it, but not one-dimensional at all. A very filled-out human being, who was a very important place in your life, and what it is, and therefore I can understand why that would form such a pivotal bit of what it means to what masculinity means to you.
Yeah. I think, you know, again, had Mum had gone first, I think Dad would have really struggled in a way that Mum has managed to carry on. Like Dad didn't have any friends. Yeah. All of the friends were driven by Mum's relationships and Mum's, you know, social network, which I think is really common. But again, if you talk about decisions that make you vulnerable, that would have left him very, very vulnerable had Mum have gone first. And that's why I love the work that Mongrels Men does, because, you know, I look at that and I think there are so many men in that situation. And again, it just kind of happens without, like, just suddenly you wake up and here it is. And, you know, I wonder how Dad would have coped in that regard. Like, he was very social, but they weren't his friends. He didn't drive the relationships. He didn't drive the social outcomes. He didn't drive the dinners. He didn't drive the meetups. He didn't drive the barbecues. You know, it was all
such a traditional model. Men have friends that are married to the wives of their family. So thank you for sharing about your dad. And you were just leading me not neatly where I wanted to go with vulnerability. I think you were on the cusp of saying that being vulnerable and sharing how he felt wouldn't necessarily be in his wheelhouse. How would you describe the level of vulnerability for your dad?
I think with me, he was pretty good. Yeah. sometimes I think vulnerability and those moments of connection come with just incidental time.
Yeah.
And time is something we don't always give each other. And I know with my own child, like sometimes we just, week to week, we're just so busy doing all the things, you know, doing school, doing the assignments, doing the learning for exams, doing the activities, doing the friends, and you don't get those moments to sit and just actually just check in. Or if you do, you know, you're scrolling on your phone or what have you. And I think it's finding those moments and intentionally going in to connect in a vulnerable way and asking those questions or what have you. So, you know, I think, you know, like I was saying, I would have loved to have seen where our relationship got to in our later years, because when he passed away, I had, you know, recently started my career in Sydney. He was sort of winding down his career. And within the next few years, he would have retired. And then, of course, we would have gone on to, you know, get married and have children, and he would have been around for those things. So we would have had that time to interact and reflect and have those vulnerabilities on a week-to-week, day-to-day basis. We didn't really see them. You know, we were busy. He was busy. He was working. You know, it was a busy family. So I think on reflection of that, I think it's finding those moments and those times to sit and say, hey, how are you going? Or how's this friend? Or, you know, those open-ended questions.
Yeah, it sounds like you got some of that time when you were at home. I know you played a lot of sport, did you? Or what were the sort of times that you typically got to spend with your dad?
In the car. Yeah, always in the car. And you know, parenting advice they say now is if you want to talk to your teenagers, just put them on a long car drive.
Yeah, can totally agree.
They can't go anywhere and they don't have to look you in the eye. So yeah, often long car trips I went to university in Lismore, so I would come up to the Gold Coast for the weekend for something, and then Dad would drive me back, and we had sort of 2.5 hours in the car. And I remember a lot of conversations happening then, or, you know, every summer we would go, we camped a lot as a family. We didn't have a lot of money, so while all my friends were going to fancy resorts and international islands, I was, you know, camping up in Queensland, which I look back on now and I just love the fact I had that opportunity, because it was just such a great, wholesome upbringing. But, you know, we had this little 16-foot catamaran that Dad bought, and he got kind of into sailing, and he wanted to teach us how to sail and how the wind worked, and you know, different things like that. And we'd go camping at this lake, or it was back in the day when you could put a boat onto Byron Bay and you could sail out in the bay. So we used to do that on weekends, and Dad and I would go out sailing. We'd chase the dolphins and the whales, and, you know, when you're sitting on a boat sailing along a lake or in the ocean, they're the times when you can have, you know, because you're close to nature, and those things are just, you know, it's just a beautiful environment. Whether he had those discussions with my brothers or not, I don't know. I think it was just a special bond that we had.
Yeah. We are gonna circle around to mongrels men, and I know one of the central themes there is around men sharing shoulder to shoulder, face to face, and it sounds exactly like the sort of relationship you have with your dad. I had a question around how can fathers balance strength and openness and things like that, and it sounds like you've shared a bunch of ways that your dad absolutely did. Is that the sort of thing you'd say fathers today could absolutely model and could benefit from?
Yeah, and that beautiful saying, vulnerability is strength.
Yeah. They
don't need to be balanced. They are exactly the same. They are one in the same. And it is hard to be vulnerable. It's hard to, especially when you're in charge of the ship at home. When you're the captain of the ship at home and you're leading the way, you're a leader for your children, it is often hard to take a step back and go, hey, I don't know the answer to that, or I got that wrong, or, you know, how I spoke to you tonight, I'm really not happy with the way I did that and I reacted really badly, I'm really sorry. You know, like those kind of conversations that often feel hard because you have to switch modes. You have to go from captain of the ship to deckmate, you know, or deckhand, or what do they call them? The mate, you know, to use that analogy. But there's something really powerful in that. There's something really strong about that. And then, and then the next morning you shift back into captain mode and off we go.
Yeah.
But I think vulnerability is a strength. And I think it's called that because it is really hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to say that you don't know the answer, or you got it wrong, or you're embarrassed about what happened, or you regret something.
Yeah.
But the more often you do it, the easier it gets.
Yeah. Do you think that's a shift in parenting models from our parents' generation to what we're doing now?
Yeah.
Is that ability to be more vulnerable and say, hey, I didn't quite get that right.
Yeah.
What I actually care about is this, and I'm willing to admit that I didn't do the right thing.
Yeah, definitely. I think, it certainly wasn't like that growing up for most of people in my generation. And then the generation before children was seen and not heard.
Yeah.
I still have a philosophy that, there needs to be a captain.
Yeah.
Children feel secure when they know that someone's got it handled. But that doesn't mean you have to have it handled all the time.
Yeah.
And doesn't mean to say that you don't have the ability to be honest about not knowing all the answers.
Yeah.
Although if I was completely honest about how many times I didn't know the answer,
Yes.
I think I'd be steamrolled every single day.
Tracy, I'm hearing there's limits to this honesty business.
I need to read your book about lying.
Yeah.
I think it's a very, very different way of parenting. It's a more honest way of parenting, and I think it brings you closer. Any vulnerable conversation will bring you closer to somebody, not further away. It feels hard and it feels awkward and it feels icky sometimes, but it will always bring you closer.
It is harder. That's an essential theme that's coming out of my Manifestly Good interviews, is that the good stuff is on the other side of hard things, and this is one of them. And thank you for sharing. I wholeheartedly agree with those parenting models. One of my big ones is consistency.
Yeah.
But consistency doesn't mean I'm right all the time. It means we've got values and we share what they are, and where the boundaries are. And if I step out of them, being consistent means, and living in accordance with means that I'm willing to own up and say so, and apologise and say this. I'm not living in accordance with the values that I tell you are important.
And what great modelling that is.
Yeah. I can see why you wish you had. It's a big thing. We're shifting to, so we're segueing to Mongrel's Men now, which is a men's mental health initiative you've been involved in for ages. What drew you to working for a men's mental health initiative and charity?
It might seem a little bit misaligned with what I've been through. I think the reason I've been, I was so passionate about men's mental health, to be honest, it's quite selfish. I want there to be good men in the world for me, because I've had the full gamut of good men and evil men in my life, and I want there to be more good men. So first of all, that I have a daughter who's 14. I want her to grow up in a world where there are great men, there are great male role models, where there are great father models. I want that for her. I have a brother who has incredibly challenging mental health issues, and he has for a very, very long time. And he finds the world really hard. And I see him struggle, and I've seen him struggled over the years, and I believe that something like this could help him. And then I see, men, whether they be husbands of my girlfriends or just men that I work with, or men generally, and I see that they are lacking connection, they are lacking community, and it is often driven by the dominant female in their lives. And I think I could see a need for it. So when the opportunity came up, I sort of jumped on it, and I'm really passionate about this being, something that we lean into. If I can do that with my skills and my experience from a marketing point of view to support the charity to scale and grow, then I will, 100% do that. And it is so important that we focus on men in this in this case. I think women sort of do it naturally, focus on our mental health. We will lean into it with our girlfriends or our, self-guided growth. But for men, of the 9 people that die every day from suicide, 7 of those are men.
Yeah, it's outrageous.
So it's incredibly important that we try and find solutions to pull that number down.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. Men's mental health isn't a male problem; it's a societal problem. And you leaning in hard is fabulous with your skills and background and resilience and your value system. It's unreal, Tracy. What do you think some of the biggest challenges are that men face in mental health and overcoming mental health challenges?
I think one of the biggest challenges humans are facing right now is loneliness.
Yeah.
But I see it more pronounced in men. Whether they like to admit it or not, they might be surrounded by people but still be lonely.
We've covered a bit of it today, haven't we? Even in in the most intimate relationships, men are challenged by sharing how they actually feel, and even when they want to, they don't have the toolbox to communicate with. So lonely. Yeah. So tell me more. What do you mean by the loneliness epidemic?
Yeah. And I think we have a world full of really lonely people. I think we are more digitally connected than ever, but there's this difficulty in creating bonds, and that can only come through, I believe, face to face, like real connection and real bond and real support and real security comes from this face to face interaction. And I don't think there's, unless you are motivated as a bloke to go join a soccer team or a cycling group or a running group or whatever, and not everyone's sporty, right? I think it's quite hard for men to find community groups to join.
It is. Yeah.
I think there are a lot of volunteer opportunities in the world, but traditionally men don't lean into those as much. But to find a group that, helps with loneliness, I think that's an incredible opportunity. So, the biggest thing that I see that Mongrels Men provides is a community. And community brings a sense of belonging, and a sense of belonging improves your self-esteem, your communication skills, reduces lack of loneliness or reduces loneliness. And, there are all the things. I mean, Mongrels Men does so much, but that, I believe, is the core to the value that they bring to the world. Is a reduction in loneliness. Yeah,
you mentioned community. It's one of the 5 pillars of Mongrels Men.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely agree with that. I know one of the other ones is around movement.
Yeah.
I didn't introduce Mongrels Men properly, but can you describe some of the sort of the main initiatives that help it, connect men and help with that mental health challenge?
Yeah. So it's a community group that is set up to prevent, reduce, and control, mental health disorders and suicide. So the key pillars are community, conversation, connection, and movement, and they all sort of fit together.
Yeah.
So typically the groups, so they're meetups that are in different suburbs, will meet up at sunrise. They will do some type of movement, and it's kind of a choose your own adventure. Yeah. Some people run, some people walk, some people sit and meditate, some people surf, some people swim, always around sunrise. And some movement is done to get the oxygen flowing and all of the goodness that comes from that. And then the charity buys everyone a coffee. And that's so that everyone sticks around and has a bit of a chat. It's always good to have a cup of coffee when you're having a chat. It's free. There are no barriers to joining. There are no hurdles. And essentially, the blokes turn up if and when they want. There's no pressure to turn up. There's no membership. You don't have to let anyone know. It is just a really, really simple formula. Let's get together, do a bit of activity, grab a coffee and have a conversation.
Fabulous.
And it's the same time every week. In the different areas, same day, same time every week. So they know the gang's going to be there, and they start to form these bonds and connections, and friendships have grown out of this. They all support one another. They're on a WhatsApp chat so that if times get tough for someone, they kind of get the vibe and they reach out to each other. And it is a men's group because that's the purpose of it. Yeah. But I've turned up from time to time, and they are the most incredible group of men from a hugely diverse background. And, you know, a lot of them come to the group, and I get the emails because I set up the website. So I get the emails, the form from the website. And quite often, more often than not, I'm going to say 85% of the time, the message on it will say, you know, I've got a great life, I've got a great job, my kids are awesome, but I have 0 friends. Or I'm going through divorce and I have no friends. So very, very often this is the conversation that comes through, and they're very open on the form because obviously, you know, it comes through, and then we put them into a group if we've got one in their region, and suddenly there's a group of men that over time become friends. And, you know, that's what an incredible gift to the world that charity is providing. And specifically for these men, you know, some of them are widows and they've become very lonely very suddenly. And, you know, this every week gets them out of bed, gives them a group, gives them people in their local community they can reach out to at different times. So, yeah, it's an incredible community and incredible charity. Very proud to be a part of it.
Yeah, I love it. The more I learn about it, the more excited I get. Manifestly Good is about inspiring men to leave the world in a better place than the way they found it. And you just hearing you that last bit describe that is like a checklist for what society tells men is the pathway they're meant to take. You know, get a job, get married, get a house, provide for my kids. I'm doing all the right things, and yet I'm lonely and I feel lost. And a reconnection with values, which is about, you know, looking after each other and looking after community and things like that. And Mongrels Men just sits as a great spot to be able to connect and fill a gap for men. So
yeah, you're doing great work.
They are, you are doing great work. So thank you. Strength and resilience strike me as a core bit of who you are and the Tracy Hall story. You faced some fabulously large challenges in your life, Tracy. I'm curious as to know what you would describe true resilience. What would you say that looks like?
Resilience can only be built through suffering and adversity. No one becomes resilient by reading a book about grief, or, you know, you actually have to go through these experiences. And, you know, we'll kind of get to my point of view about resilience, but one concern that I do have about the kids coming through now, the younger generation, is that as parents and adults, we try and remove all suffering and hardship from their lives because we don't want them to hurt, we don't want them to be in pain, we don't want them to suffer. And yet what we do is actually take away their ability to build resilience. And I'm concerned about that, you know, for the next generation. But for me, I've had to go through those tough times to be resilient, or to find resilience and strength, because without those challenges, I would never have tested myself. And for me, it's almost like the challenges I faced in my 20s set me up for the next set of challenges I faced in my 30s, which then built upon the resilience I had to actually withstand the storm that was Hamish McLaren when he came tumbling through my life in my 40s. And I feel like I know that I'll face difficult challenges again. Adversity doesn't discriminate. These things happen. It's just life. But what I do know is that I have built a level of strength through those experiences that give me a sense of knowledge that I'm going to be okay. And this is what the kids are missing. Because without those tumbles, without those falls, without that pain, without that suffering, they don't know how much they can handle. So when something big happens, they're going to be in a lot of trouble. And what I know about resilience is I've built on mine throughout my life, and I don't wish all the things that have happened to me to fall onto anybody. But what I do know is that if something else happens, that I'm going to be okay. And that to me is what resilience is. It's that internal knowledge that you have the strength to withstand whatever is thrown at you.
You say, what I'm hearing is your resilience factor now is a lot different to the younger version of yourself, and that it was built upon a foundation of experiences that allow you to be, because I think most people would look at your journey with Hamish and say that's unbearable, and how can anyone come out okay out the other side with the positive attitude that you have. And I know I've heard you describe that the immediate aftermath was incredibly difficult, and you relied on the support of a lot of people that were close to you. But it's the foundation of difficult experiences through your life that built a foundation for your ability to handle that and what's to come. Yeah, I think that's so true. Another one of my manifestly good guests is Andrew Lyons, who is the developer of a rite of passage journey for high school students. That's exactly what you describe. It's about how traditionally, culturally, we've had a transition from childhood to adulthood, and it's about difficulty. It's about putting people out into the woods or taking on responsibilities that are beyond their capacity, and being allowed to fail and know what that feels like. It's when we try to protect our children, we actually keep them back from the things that they need.
We take away that opportunity. I used to do this thing with just talking about failure. I used to do this thing every night with my daughter when she was young. You do gratitude every night. What are you grateful for? Got to be bored of that after a while. And so we switched it up, and the 3 questions we asked each other over the dinner table when she was about 8, 9 and beyond were, how were you kind? So the 3 things that we spoke about over the dinner table were 3 questions. How were you kind? How were you brave? And how did you fail today? And in doing that exercise, it actually allowed us to focus on not only the great things, so the gratitude that was in our life, but also doing a good deed, so service to others. And then how did you fail? And what did we learn from that? And knowing that talking about a failure is fine. Oh, you did that and you didn't get it right, that's okay. It doesn't matter. I had a major fail because I forgot the food was in the oven and now it's all burnt and we had to get takeaway. Like, whatever. Like, they're just silly examples. But
but normalising the idea that it's okay to make mistakes and learn and grow.
Learn from it.
It's so true. The modelling I got from my childhood that I still carry today is is to avoid negativity. Is to that when something goes wrong, here's why things are going to explain immediately why things are going to be okay. And it's so powerful because it's a positive thing. It's allowed me to succeed and be resilient, but it makes me realise that I've never sat with the negative side of things and go, that's okay. And yes, I'm going to fix it, but it's okay for that to be bad as well. And I realise I'm of course passing that modelling on to my children too. So I love it. I've been taking furious notes on the dating stuff, Tracy, and now I'm taking lots of parenting notes as well. Thank you. When I think about resilience, I think about coping mechanisms and things like that. And you've had your share in working through incredibly traumatic experiences. How do you think men can find healthier coping mechanisms? I mean, obvious one's probably being connected to groups like Mongrels Men and things like that. But have you got any advice you give to men about how they can cope with really challenging circumstances?
Perhaps it goes back to communication. Because I think when you let it out and you share your challenges with someone in a space that allows you to do that with vulnerability and honesty, then that's a load off your shoulder. And 'cause a lot of coping mechanisms can come through, drinking or smoking or addictions to exercise or whatever it might be. So I do wonder whether communication is a way to cope. It's a positive way to cope. I think it's a hard one. I think everyone has their own way of coping. So for me, being in the ocean is just a beautiful way to just wash away the problems. I also love journaling. I love writing. So sometimes for me that's it. For someone else it might be walking in the rainforest and I think it comes back to knowing oneself. What is it that makes you feel good, that's a positive way to deal with something. And I think we all know deep down what are negative ways.
Yeah.
You know, but what's a positive way? For someone talking, that might be just torture for them.
Yes.
You know, so I say communication,
Yeah.
but that could be just torturous for somebody.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it is about knowing who you are as a person, what drives you, what makes you feel good, what relieves you of your challenges and pain, and just leaning into that. But that comes through a lot of self-reflection and emotional intelligence.
I think you've hit it all there. I mean, you hear a lot of the mindfulness advice that we hear currently it's a lot of those things you talked about. Finding ways to disconnect and getting into a body. An expression I've heard that I like is getting out of your mind and into your body, doing things that are physical, connecting with nature and things like that. Oh, yeah, you're right about communication. And even better if you can double them up, right? And that's where Mongrels Men comes in.
Walk and talk.
Yeah, walk and talk and do those things at once. It's
so individual though. I just, once you find the thing that works for you, then double down.
Yeah, it's good advice. If you could give one piece of advice to men about building strong values, what would that be?
Building values.
Yeah. And in context, you know, we've talked, one of the themes we've talked today is about that shift from traditional roles of masculinity to reshaping into and honesty about with yourself and things like that. But I'm interested in if men are doing a reevaluation of their value system, what guidance or advice would you give them?
I think it gets back to what we were talking about earlier, and it's this notion of not proving yourself but knowing yourself. Yeah. And proving yourself comes through those external factors that look like success or wealth or physical appearance or, you know, these external things that really don't mean that much but drive your ego to, instead of proving yourself, it's knowing yourself. And when you know yourself, you know what it takes to get to where you want to go. You know what you want for your life. You know what kind of person you want to be. You know what kind of father you want to be. Yeah. And knowing yourself is the key to unlocking all of those things. But that's an internal job. It's got nothing to do with what it looks like on the outside. Yeah.
I like it. If you could change one narrative around masculinity, what would it be? You're limited to one, please.
I think the one that's springing to mind right now is really about emotions and the difference between controlling emotions and suppressing emotions. Yeah. Because I think there's a very light, faint line in many people's minds between those two things. But suppressing emotions is very unhealthy. You know, it may keep it down for the moment, but it's going to bubble up at some point and come out in some negative way. Whereas controlling emotions is about emotional regulation. Again, it comes back to knowing oneself. It comes back to knowing what it feels like in your body when you feel the rage coming and knowing what to do with that. And if doing that requires you to leave the room and go for a run for 20 minutes, then that's okay. Yeah. You know, so I think there's this narrative that we have to kind of suppress emotions in past masculine way, whereas I think controlling emotions is okay. It's about self-regulation, but that requires a lot of self-reflection.
Thank you. There's been lots of examples of that in our discussion today, whether it's around financial transparency in intimate relationships, in parenting. You know, we're talking about being willing to be open and transparent around feelings around, hey, I haven't lived in accordance with our own values and things like that. So, I think that's a really good one, isn't it? If the masculine model is that this is a rock, a pillar, you know, and emotions we don't see emotions because I've just got I need to be the provider and the steady thing that keeps which everything else gets to hang on to, and exhibiting weakness is not what it is to be masculine. I think you're absolutely right. There's ability to share. So
and emotions are good things.
Yeah,
they're great things. It's just not always seen like that through a male lens.
It's been a theme of our discussion too, is it's the kind of the good stuff is on the other side of the hard stuff, and it might be hard working through your emotions, but
freedom, and a whole bunch of good stuff is on the other side.
Yeah.
As we bring it into land, I know you've reinvented yourself post Hamish, and you're an author, and you've got a business. You know, what does your life look like now? What's next for you? You know, where can people see the work that you do and find Tracy Hall?
So full time, I work in this space full time, advocating for scams and fraud victims, educating people on the risks around financial vulnerability.
Yeah.
So I do this full time. I work with corporates. I do keynotes, education, workshops. Of course, my book is available on Amazon. It's probably the best place to get it right now, called The Last Victim. And you can find me on LinkedIn, on my website, tracyhall.com.au, or Instagram.
Thank you, Tracy. I've really enjoyed this. The Manifestly Good message is about inspiring men to look deeply at their own value system and realise that when you put those things first, that you can leave the world in a better place. You can leave yourself in a better place, and having you as a guest has been fabulous for lots of reasons. Mungles Men is a big part of that, about men realising that the mental health journey isn't just about, you know, fixing something that might be broken. It's about what a healthy male relationships look like. And as has been a common theme in all the things we've talked about today, the best things in life are often on the side of some other hard work. What's really come out is your value system. You are known for your resiliency, but you know, lots of your other strong values that we've got to learn from have come a lot from your father, have been fabulous too. Your kindness, empathy, and caring nature comes out really strongly, and I think, you know, our discussion has revealed that that's a really strong thing for men too. That leaving behind some of the older masculine models, you can be strong, but strength doesn't mean toughness or a hard exterior. It can mean connection. It can mean transparency and maybe challenging some of the old ideals around masculinity. I've loved this. I know our audience will too. Thank you very much.
Thank you. There's some great men in the world, and thank you for bringing this conversation to life.
My pleasure. Thanks.
What I love most about this conversation with Tracy is the way she balances clarity with compassion. She challenges men, not from a place of blame, but a belief that they are capable of so much more. More connection, more honesty, and more shared ownership of the beautiful, messy work of building strong partnerships and raising emotionally intelligent kids. Tracy's reflections on how the models of fatherhood and parenting we grew up with can hold us back, and how we can break the cycle with intention, is truly a gift. Her story is a reminder that doing the work to grow isn't just about self-improvement. It's about becoming someone others can rely on and truly build a life with. If you found this conversation valuable, please like, subscribe, or leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And remember, every small action matters when it comes to creating change. I'll see you in the next one.